Hey!
1, 2, 3. Hey, we're doing a new show.
It's called To Dad with Love, a tribute to Buddy Ebsen. And Buddy Ebsen is our father. I'm Kiki.
I'm Dusty.
And we are the two youngest children of Buddy Ebsen. And we've created a show. It's multimedia, it's music, it's film, it's memories of our father in a time before we were born. I didn't know much about his career as I was growing up, as I was a kid, because my dad was already pretty much dead clampett, and he was a famous star, and so I was raised in this sort of entitled world of television and his acting world, and my mother had a theater, and it was kind of surreal and fun and artsy, and the show starts to explore the multi-layered aspect of being the offspring of a major talent, you know, especially in that era where stars were really big stars and their shadows were very all-encompassing. It was really hard to get out and find your own voice as their child. I'm in the entertainment business, Dusty is as well, and I've had a great career. We both had great careers, but there's been this little like nagging, like, are we good enough? Did we deserve it? What's going on? What do we really know our father? We had our differences,
the interesting thing
you know?
is we didn't really know him, and we learned a lot of things over the years since Kiki and I are like the Irish twins. We're a year apart, and we were born, you know, 6 to 8 years later than the rest of our sisters, and so we learned a lot of things late in life, like that we had a brother, we had an aunt that died, but more interestingly, there was the stories about his journey with the Wizard of Oz, how he first was cast as a scarecrow, and then later got bumped to the Tin Woodsman, and then got sick and almost died. And a lot of the things that he experienced, he was unhappy to talk about and didn't really share it with us.
It was very painful. That was a painful part of his life back when they were doing The Wizard of Oz, and he was a contract player, and you know, he got very ill from the aluminum dust that they used as makeup, and it not only almost killed him, but it cost him his reputation with the studio. They limited his parts when he went back to work. He eventually left MGM and struggled yet again. I mean, he's had such amazing highs and lows. But like I said, we were born at a time where we were living the high life. You know, we had a pretty great life, but there were a lot of little emotional, actually rather large emotional pitfalls that we also experienced growing up in this family.
Well, we were raised by wolves, basically.
That's what
because both of our parents had lives and careers and were very artistic and very amazingly and brilliant people, but we were sort of thrown to the back of the bus and
they also
allowed
had
to figure out life.
They had a lot of drama in their life. They had a very artistic, relationship as they were attracted to each other's, like that vitality, and that passion for life and arts, but they also butted heads a lot. And eventually, you know, they got divorced, and it was a rocky 15 years before they finally got divorced, and that was all the time. It was all my teenage years, and Dusty's as well. And you know, I had a lot of emotional challenges, as did my siblings, and my parents really weren't there and able to be there for us. So
but the good news is we came through a lot of this alive. We did a lot of stupid things when we were young, but we also are able to glean from the things that we can do, and we decided a few years back to take our strengths and our history and combine them with our dad's story and songs and music and visuals, and create this talking and walking and musical and visual journey through his life that is kind of unusual.
It's our take and of again, trying to reconnect with a father that was much older when we were born. He was probably 50, in his 50s by the time we came along. So we didn't have that kind of like, it's not like it is today. It's like kind of like with your grandfather or something like that. And, you know, I, of course, like any child, is looking for approval from my parents. They wanted a very different life in the entertainment world than I chose. Like, I'm a rock and roller. My dad wanted me to sing jazz. My mom wanted me to be an opera singer. It was like, either be an opera singer or marry a doctor, you know, or a lawyer. I mean, it was just so bizarre. So I basically just took off on my own and kind of disappeared for a while and lost touch with my parents, especially my dad. And he went on, he remarried and, you know, started a whole nother life that really didn't include us. And that was hurtful, you know, of course. And as you know, we were friendly, but it was very distant. So as his health, you know, started to fade, we started to connect with him, and I connected with him, and Dusty did too. And it was just, but it was like it was too late. Like, it was so surreal to be with him in that moment, but then it had passed, and it was like, you know, wow.
We were able to share many stories, and in the last month of his life, we were allowed, Kiki and I were allowed to stay with him at the hospital. And we talked more about the stories, we talked more about his early life, and it was a moment that I'll never forget.
No, it was very real.
Being at his bedside. He even talked at one point about seeing his sister Velma at the bed, and that
it was
totally freaked me out.
Yeah. I mean, it was the most vulnerable, intense, but loving, comforting time to be with him in a place where he really couldn't be in control. You know, he really had no control of the situation. I mean, he was getting ready to transition, you know, and it was about three or 4 day period. It was healing, though, for me to be there, and that started a whole trajectory. This was back in 2003, and then after my mother passed away, I found this trunk in her house that was like the trunk that everyone was looking for, apparently. I guess my dad had lost this trunk, lost track of it, and in it is like all this memorabilia from the 30s. So, I mean, like the script from Born to Dance and Yokel Boy, his songbook from The Wizard of Oz, all the letters he wrote to his family when he first moved to New York in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s.
So we combine these things. What is the show? The show is music, the show is visuals, is storytelling. Kiki sings and narrates the show. I've done all the visuals and the video clips and put things together. And we've both designed the show to be that's entertaining as well as informational. And this kind of, if you're watching a documentary, it's a live documentary on stage.
With a tie to the real human aspect. So I use myself, since I am basically the person narrating with this great band that plays the music. And the music basically all came out of this idea that I wanted to make a jazz record for my dad finally for Father's Day, posthumously.
Scarecrow Sessions.
Yeah, well, Scarecrow Sessions is the CD that I eventually made based on all the music I found in the trunk, all the shows, and went, oh my gosh, there's these great songs like Comes Love from Yokel Boy, and The Codfish Ball from Captain January, and St. Louis Blues from Banjo on My Knee, Moon River from Breakfast at Tiffany's. I was like, there's a whole record here, and I can do it as a jazz record, and I can dedicate it to my father. And that's actually all I was planning on doing, long before the show came about.
Right, and then that's when we got this idea to
right. I started telling the stories.
Make a visual journey out of this.
Started telling the stories, and then Dusty was like, hey, put a few pictures behind that, and hey, we got a show. And then
we
morphed.
Keep evolving. The show keeps somehow, we keep finding new stories.
Well, I think we get
like
I think we get braver.
The other day, John Landis said to me, I was at an event, and John Landis sat down and said, I have a great story about your dad. And I'm like, what? And he apparently ran into him, and so we keep running into these interesting people because he had such a long career.
I ran into Michael Feinstein, since we're talking names.
There you go.
Yeah, I ran into Michael Feinstein at a barbecue, and he told me that he'd accompanied Dad on a show, on some sort of live event, and Dad wanted to make up new lyrics to the standards because he thought he wrote them better, which I thought was hilarious. Myself, but anyway, so the show morphed out of that, and I think what happens is each time we do it, we get a little braver about how much we want to tell, mainly about ourself. And for me, it was very important to kind of get to some of the essence of some of the darkness that I felt and some of the disconnect between my father and I, so that I could get to the end where we could be healed and move forward in this beautiful light. And even though he's not with us anymore, I feel him as if he was right next to me. And I think people connect to that. I think everyone can connect to an experience like
it's an extraordinary audience experience. We've done now, I think, 10 shows, roughly.
Probably,
We did some in New York, we did it back east, and we've done a bunch in LA. But every time we do it, it's a different show. We videotape them, we see what we've done, we see how we can make it better, but we also add more stories, more images. There's over 200 images, and different songs, because he not only wrote songs, but there's other songs from movies that he did.
And there's some great dance bits too. We show probably the best of the best.
Yes, his dance bits. And then there's some secrets to this show that that we don't want to talk about until you have to come see it.
You have to come see it. You have to come see it.
That's right.
No, you really, I can't say enough really beautiful things about it. We've been getting great, I mean, everyone who's seen it, all the reviewers and such have just really connected again to, if you look at on stage, the story of a daughter, it's our story, but it's like this sort of pleading,
It's all the images. It's the images.
Reconnect.
There's images of Kiki and Dad, and when she was on stage with him, when he first brought her up on stage, how she wanted to run off the stage.
Yeah.
But also just the movies. Davy Crockett, Breakfast at Tiffany's, the Hillbillies. We cover them all, but from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the images are when we were little, climbing on the truck and.
What are your memories of seeing Dad on TV for the first time?
Well, you and I were always watching our big black set, the giant TV tube, black and white TV, and we thought that everybody was on television. We thought everybody's dad was on television.
We were like,
I think we
4
were
and
like
5 or something.
4 and
like
5.
That. Yeah.
And we would look for him all day. We would be searching, and my mother would come in and go, "What are you guys doing?" And then we'd say, "We're looking for Dad on the TV." Like we're gonna find him.
And then we found him. We did.
We found him one day. Mom came in and said, "What are you watching?" And she's like, "We're watching Dad." And she goes, "No, that's Lawrence Welk."
I thought he looked very similar. Didn't talk like him, but he looked very similar.
A wonderful.
And he has hair parted down the middle. Dad sometimes did that.
He did.
When he was wearing his going to meeting clothes. Remember his going to meeting clothes?
Yeah. So we really want you to come and see it. It's going to be a great show. It's one in the journey of doing this show, and it's very emotional. We keep asking ourselves, why do we keep doing it? At the end of each show, I have to watch these images. She has to not only watch them, but also perform.
To perform and sing.
It's a very emotional show, and we think the audience gets that same emotion. And it's hard for us to do. So enjoy it because it's really hard.
It's brave because you lay it all out. It's for everyone to view, and like or not like or whatever, and you've got to be okay with whatever happens because it's really for you.
Yeah, we want people to come and enjoy it, but also think about family members that you may not have here anymore. And it's all about, just because they're gone doesn't mean they're gone. Everyone leaves something back behind them when they pass away. And I think the important thing to remember is he's still here. We still have pieces of him, and I feel a lot of ways, and many times that I'm in a situation, I feel that he's here still.
Absolutely, I do believe that. And although he wasn't an outwardly spiritual person in terms of like he didn't, he had his little sayings like, nobody counts you out but yourself, and every day's a new ball game. But at the end of his book, he ends his autobiography with, of all the things that comprise a human being, the one that will outlast everything is spirit. I thought that was so profoundly, you know,
Yeah.
new agey of our dad. But
it's him.
real, you know.
That is a great caricature of him.
Yeah.
That's a great line, because that was him. He got into every character he did, but he was a genuine article.
So we'll be at Theater West, October 12th, 13th, and 14th. And that's Friday, Saturday at 8 p.m. And on Sunday, it's a matinee at 2 p.m.
Come see the show.
Come see the show.
You'll love it.